Mas todo mundo que fala assim que o bom dos gêmeos é que depois eles brincam juntos, né? Então diz que essa parte é boa.
Let's get started.
Vai começar.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone that is in your homes. Welcome to FSS Online. Welcome, everybody that is in here today. It's very good. It's a wonderful feeling to be here around friends again. It's a grateful experience after 2 years of pandemic only providing lectures online. So welcome to join us online. If you would rather come later today, we will have our FSS general meeting and we invite you all to join us. If you want to come, you will be very welcome. If you cannot come, please join us after our lecture today online. We'll be transmitting our general meeting through WhatsApp, Zoom. So we're going to send the link afterwards through our WhatsApp group. So you're going to have the chance to participate and to help us with our election for this year. All right, so let's start with our text of harmonization and then our initial prayer for today. So the text that we have today is from The Living Spring by Francisco Cândido Xavier by the Spirit Emmanuel. And the text is number 85, On Our Journey. Jesus asked him, "What would you like me to do for you?" Mark chapter 10, verse 51. Each student has a lesson to learn. Each worker has been entrusted with a task. Each vase has its usefulness. Each struggler has an ordeal to endure. Thus, each of us has our own individual testimony on the road of life. We often fail at our commitments, and thus greatly increase our debts. Yet, in our redemptive endeavor, we beg the Lord for His mercy, compassion, and help. The question the Master asks of the blind man from Jericho is highly meaningful. However, what would you like me to do for you? This question shows us that the beggar's delicate position was in line with the imperatives of the law. Nothing happens in absentia of the divine principles. Blind Bartimaeus knew how to respond and asked to be able to see. Nevertheless, how many people pray for access to the Savior's presence? But when asked by him, they answer it their own detriment. Let us remember that sometimes we may have to lose our earthly home in order to learn the way to our heavenly home. On many occasions, we are abandoned by those who we love the most, so that we may return to the divine bounds. And then there are the times when the wounds of the body are called on the heel, those of the spirit. And there are situations in which paralysis teach us how precious being able to move is. It is natural for us to ask for the Master's help in our afflictions and difficulties. Meanwhile, let us not forget for the good on the most painful passages of rectification and a sensation. Convinced that we invariably find ourselves in the most just, beneficial, and deserved opportunity of work, and that maybe, for the time being, we do not know how to choose anything better. Let's pray. Divine friend, our Master Jesus, let us pray so you may help us, inspire us in this meeting today. Help us to see beyond the letters, to understand the meaning of your message. Embrace with our hearts the message conveyed through your teachings that enlighten our life, our steps towards God. Divine friends that are here with us today in this house of love, help us to keep our hearts open for the teachings from Jesus, for the teachings that we can learn from this doctrine, from the Spiritism, which is a light. It's a sun that warms our hearts, our lives, bringing comfort, bringing peace, bringing clarifications for all our thoughts, our questions. And then help us to ask the questions that will help us as spiritists, as immortal spirits, to keep walking towards Jerusalem, towards God. So be it.
So
Hello. All right. So once again, welcome everyone. Please, those that are not here and those that are here, feel free to participate with any questions or comments. You're very welcome to help me to reflect upon this beautiful passage of the Gospel called the Blind Man of Jericho. And the question, one of the questions that we would like to bring today, among other ones, is, can I see beyond this material life? I like very much bring some parables from Jesus, and this passage is not exactly a parable, but it's full of symbols and signs and teachings, very deep, very profound teachings that we are invited to decodify, to see beyond the letters. Like in the Gospel of Spiritism, we learned that we are invited to try to bring out the spirit out of the letters. And that's the invitation here. This blind man, Bartimaeus, represents the humankind, represents each one of us, to help us with our spiritual blindness that many times prevent us seeing what is real, what is essential for our lives, and help us hopefully this passage bring to each of us the same clarity that brings to my heart in order to see myself what is the shadows that I don't want to see. How can we see beyond the circumstances and the difficulties that we pass in our lives? So the invitation here is to see us as immortal spirits living this temporary life, material life. There is this talker that I like very much, Saulo César, that we are talking here before. And, when he is doing some comments about this passage, he asks a very, very good question. He asks, why is it important for us that Jesus cured the blind man if we all can see very well, besides the glasses? Because any of Jesus' teachings is regarding the spiritual part of our lives. He doesn't see only the person, the handicapped person there, with a deficiency. He sees beyond that. He sees the immortal essence of that person. And that's the reason that we are here talking about this passage. It's an invitation to see our own souls. The same way that there are people that cannot see the sunlight, there are real people that cannot see, blind people. There are some people that cannot see the higher dimension of life, the transcendence of our lives, the reason why we are here, the purpose, the meaning, the profound meaning that our lives have. And so I would like to invite all of you to join me on this journey. We're going to travel to Palestine in Jesus' time. We will see ourselves in Jericho in that time, seeing Jesus with his apostles walking through Jericho towards Jerusalem. Hopefully you enjoy. But before that, let me tell you what are the references that we search in order to bring this talk to you. Of course, The Blind of Jericho by Arthur Varadaris. I highly recommend you all to see this lecture. It's in YouTube. You just need to type in Portuguese, O Cego de Jericho, and Arthur Valadares. And he brings us beautiful, beautiful interpretation of this passage. And most of my talk today is inspired by this talk. Also a talk from Haroldo Dutra, Not Every Blind Man Wants to See. And a Spiritist book from Allan Kardec, The Gospel of Jesus. We are going to bring the text that is described in Mark, chapter 10, verse 46 to 52. And the text from the book Construction of Love, my translation, by Emmanuel, psychographed by Francisco Cândido Xavier. All right, so the invitation that I would like to give all of you to start is to reflect upon those questions that we are this is our objective here, to answer all those questions. So, how are we seeing the invitations from life that I have been receiving lately? All the circumstances that the life has brought to me, which can be good circumstances, like circumstances that are good for me, that I can see, that inspires me, motivates me, And how can I see the invitations that I have been receiving that are more challenge, that are tough, that brings me some pain, invites me to reflect upon. And during these circumstances, can I hear the invitations from my consciousness? Can I hear the laws inviting me to comply with them? The law of compassion, the law of love, the law of charity, and all the laws from God? Do we really want to see the truth that set us free? As Jesus said, that you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. And what is the truth? The divine laws that we have in our conscience. So can we hear those invitations, and can I really want to see the truth that they bring? Am I allowing the blindness of ignorance and revolt or rebel cover my sight? But sometimes during or facing some challenging circumstances, we get very rebel, like we don't want to accept, we deny, we want to fight against. So, am I allowing this blindness, or am I accepting and trying to see beyond? So, those are the questions that hopefully we can reflect upon during our talk today. And returning to the passage, I would like to remind those that have heard about other encounters, we could say therapeutic encounter of Jesus with other people, like the Samaritan woman, Zacchaeus, that Luis brought to us last Sunday, Nicodemus, or any other encounter that Jesus had with someone that brought us knowledge, that brought us teachings regarding those encounters. Because when he was in the Jacob's well, when he accidentally meets the Samaritan woman, was not by chance. Everything that Jesus did and still does has a purpose, has a meaning, was agreed upon beyond our material life. When he encountered the Samaritan woman and teaches her about the spring lily, he was teaching all of us in that woman. He was teaching about love ourselves. Nicodemus, when he thought about the mandaments, the commandments, love God above everything, love yourself as your neighbor, he was teaching us, not only Nicodemus. And that's the point that I would like to bring today, because he was not teaching only Bartimaeus. He was teaching all of us. And let's see, how was this encounter? How did this happen? So Jesus was walking through all Palestine, and he was going towards Jerusalem for the festivities. This was right before his crucifixion. So, and it's very close in this month, we are going to celebrate his crucifixion on the Good Friday, right? So he was walking with his disciples, his apostles, towards Jerusalem, and he passed through Jericho. So the text starts saying, then they came to Jericho. as Jesus and his disciples together with a large crowd were leaving the city, a blind man, Bartimaeus, which means son of Timaeus, was sitting by the roadside begging. There are so many teachings, so many symbols here that we can decodify to learn from it. Because as I said, Jesus didn't do anything that didn't have a meaning, that was not supposed to be associated somehow to a teaching of his. So in this text, we can reflect upon the name of the city where they were that time. So Jericho was used by Jesus many times when he was teaching as a place where the materialistic manners or materialistic part of our lives were represented. So Jericho represented our part of our horizontal level of our lives, which is the materialistic part of our lives. And Jerusalem, because it was 400 meters up of Jerusalem and Jericho, was the temples where people used to go to worship God. So and the meaning of the word has everything to do here too, because the Jerusalem means the city of the peace, and Jericho means fragrant, perfume. Jericho was a place where there was big harbor where ships comes with products, goods to trade. Currency was trade. Zacchaeus was from that city. Jericho was a very rich man. So the parable of the Good Samaritan took place in Jericho when the man was injured, and there was a Samaritan that was coming from Jericho to Jerusalem. So we can understand that Jericho was the lower level of our lives, and Jerusalem is the higher level of our lives. So Jerusalem meaning the spiritual ascendance of our journey, and Jericho is the lower part, is our material part. So when we can see here that Jesus was going up to Jerusalem. So he was leaving the city. And the large crowd was with him. So we're following his steps towards a life, a meaningful life, a life with regarding our spiritual sphere, that we are providing or giving more importance to our spiritual life than our material life. So Jesus was walking towards Jerusalem, and the blind man, was sitting by the roadside begging. So then we can see that Bartimaeus was in the end of the city, was in the exit of the city. And he, as a blind man, that we can see that was temporarily blind for the spiritual part of the life. He was just seeing that part, that lower part of life, and not seeing the higher levels. But he was trying to leave that situation. He was seeking for a pathway to leave that city, that part of life. He was ready to become better, to give value to our real life, which is the spiritual life. And Jesus was walking towards that direction, and he can hear Jesus. But also, I would like to bring some knowledge about the roadside begging. The roadside here we can understand as the edge. So when we are in the roadside, we are in the edge of the road, which means in this context, that was brought not for me, but brought from other talks that I have gave as a reference in the beginning of this talk, by Arthur and by Haroldo Dutra and by Saulo César. We can understand this roadside as the edge of the divine laws. So he was not complying with the divine laws. He was sitting, he was accommodated, he was expecting, he was begging, meaning he was expecting from others to provide to him what he could provide to himself, yes. But he was not doing anything. He was not acting towards his own evolution. He was waiting for others. He was begging for external things. Begging, we can beg for, we can see that as like we are there as well in the road of our lives, in the roadside of our lives, begging for others' love, begging for others' attention, begging for material things only. When we, as Jesus taught to the Samaritan woman, can reach to our inner heart, to our own conscience, and reach the love, this spring, the living spring that never ends inside of us, which is the self-love. When we learn this pathway to reach inside of us this love, we are not going to be begging for others or others people's love, because we have for us and for everybody that is around us. And this is what the blind man was not doing. He was sitting, waiting, asking, begging, when he had enough love inside of himself, but he didn't see. He was blind. And the roadside, as I said, meaning the divine laws, that we are sometimes on the road of this road. And we are invited to walk in this road. We are invited to walk not on the roadside, but on the road, going towards God, as the question 115 asks us to do, to follow the divine laws. The ones that follows the divine laws, that accomplished with their mission, gets faster to God. So those are some of the meanings of this short paragraph can bring to us. We can see ourselves as a large crowd following Jesus up to Jerusalem. We can see ourselves leaving the city of Jericho with just regarding the material part of our lives and prioritizing the part that we are invited to prioritize, which is our spiritual evolution. I'm not saying that we should just disregard our material lives. No, it's very important for us because we live here. We need the material part of our lives. We need to give attention to this part as well. But as Emmanuel says, it's important to have discernment, to give the time enough for our material parts of our lives, and also to remember that we are immortal spirits. We are here to learn, to love, and one day we will need to leave. So if we just give attention to the material part when we leave, what we're going to take with us. So that's the importance for us, to see and to discern what is the time or what is the attention that I'm giving to both parts. That's the invitation here. And another thing that I would like to bring attention to, it's regarding the name of this man. So here we see that the meaning of his name is son of Timaeus. Bar meaning son, and Timaeus, name of his father. So we see that he doesn't have a name. His name is not mentioned. And this, it's interesting to see because can be each of us, can be any one of us. So the blind man can be any one of us, the humankind. Right? So this is a very, very interesting fact upon this part 2. And the part that he was a blind man, he was a physical blind man. But sometimes we have some blindness that is worse than this one, than the blind of our physical eyes. And Emmanuel, I would like to bring this text from Emmanuel because it really touched my heart. And where he says, the shadow in the physical eyes can be an agonizing trial, but the real blindness is that which involves the heart and the mind in the night of rebellion or ignorance. Here Emmanuel says that he's not just regarding the suffering that's a blind, a person with this deficiency, saying that this person is suffering. It isn't suffering. Everybody that cannot see, can you imagine how hard it is? Not be able to see where you are, and you need to go outside, to walk on the streets without seeing. It's important part of our bodies that we should be grateful for. But he says that the worst is the blindness that involves our heart and our mind. And then he brings some of examples of blindness in this text, Construction of Love. He brings the blind people that are crystallized in weariness, meaning greed, people that only sees the money, only sees material things in life. And we have very good examples in one of André Luiz's books. Not going to remember the name exactly now, but it's when he meets his grandpa. And his grandpa is living a very, very umbral, in a very dark part, because he was still attached to the material stuff that he left behind. And André Luiz helped him to see beyond that material part. And we can ask to ourselves, can I see the importance that I'm giving to the material part of my life? Not spending too much, but also not being greedy. And the selfish and the pride that most of the time keep us blind. And the sadness that doesn't allow us to see the sun, the beauty of the nature, the renewal that we receive every day, every morning, when God gives us a new chance to learn, to be better.
Really see God's creations, right?
Yeah,
Right.
see God's creation, exactly. Just see that, but to see not only see, look, but see, to understand how beautiful is the birds, the nature, how everything works in harmony, and complying with God's law. And the pride and the selfish that doesn't allow us to practice the virtues of charity and humbleness, to see that we are still apprentices, that we are not better than anybody, but we are God's sons, God's children, God's daughters, and we are all raising up. We are all walking in our own pace, in our own moment, in our own way to learn in direction to God, towards God.
So, this reminds me of the encounter between Paul and Jesus.
Yeah.
I think that's who gives us this interpretation where in that moment Paul went blind as an invitation for him to stop focusing and looking on the outside so much, but focus within.
Exactly.
Right? And so much so that in the next 3 or 4 years he went to the desert and spent time looking within and unlearning and relearning some things related to himself and then how to truly fulfill his life.
Exactly. Thank you very much for this reminder. It's fantastic analogy, yes, because he had to become blind to be able to see himself, to be able to look inside himself. So, and that sometimes is the worst blindness. That's what Emmanuel is saying here. The worst blindness is not being able to see, to being focused only on external things, not seeing ourselves, not looking inside of us. So, and he finalized this text saying, for those blind people who daily cross our steps, let us raise our praise for help them, for God help them. But also, let's pray, asking the Lord to keep us awake to our own responsibilities, to be able to see our own responsibilities with sufficient vision for the performance of our duties. So this is very significant for us, because sometimes we don't want to see what is preventing us to walk, to move ahead in our lives. We don't, sometimes we cannot see because of the ignorance, or sometimes we don't want to see because of our pride. As an example that Victor brought to us regarding Paul, he was blind. He was in this blindness because of his pride. So that's the invitation for us. And then in this passage of the Bartimaeus, how he encountered Jesus. So he heard that Jesus was coming, and then he started shouting, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. So here we come back to the text of harmonization when Emmanuel asked us what we are asking. So he was shouting, and here we have a very good analogy about shouting. He was shouting, he was trying to see if Jesus would hear him, because we will see later there are lots of people between him and Jesus. So he was trying to call Jesus' attention. And how we do that in our lives many times. When we are facing challenging situation, don't we cry, or don't we complain? Don't we sometimes shout to God, help us? That's a good representation of our own shouting to God. We start showing him our pain and asking him to help us. However, Bartimaeus, he made some efforts. So he heard Jesus, so he used the sense that he had. He couldn't see Jesus, but he heard. So he used the source that he had, the tool that he had. So what we're doing with the tools, with the talents that we have, he used his talent to call Jesus' attention. Which talent that we are using to call Jesus' attention? When we see also this recalled me the passage when Jesus was feeding, doing the multiplication of the breads and fish, when the disciples came to him and said, Jesus, Master, there are so many people, we need to, and they are hungry, let's leave them, get away, walk away so they can get something to eat. So Jesus looked at them and said, what do you have? Jesus will help us, but we are invited to present something so he can help us. If Bartimaeus was there not shouting, quiet and sitting, he would be helped. I'm not saying that we shouldn't shout, we shouldn't ask God. That's because we are apprentices, sometimes we are kind of lost in the situations that we are living, and we don't know what to do, and we don't know what directions we need to walk to. So it's important to ask God, to shout sometimes, Jesus, God, have mercy on me. Help me to find the right way to go.
If you may say something. Because Jesus and God are always with us, right? But if we ask for that help, we do the praying, we are showing that we are ready. We are making that effort towards our, whatever the need. Sometimes we're just asking because we feel that we can't do alone. Sometimes we ask because maybe consciously I don't want to do anything, but I'm asking for that help. It's already better than just do nothing, right? So
exactly,
yeah.
Because the laws, the divine laws, and the virtues, they represent actions.
Yeah.
They invite us to do something, to choose better, to make a choice, to act towards our own happiness. We are the creators of our destiny. Nothing is imposed to us. We are always invited to work towards our own enlightenment. And this recalled me a very interesting story about this priest that he was working in this seminar with his friends and his other priests. And he used to ask God and Jesus that he wanted so much to see Jesus. He asked every night to see Jesus, to be able to sit with Jesus and talk to Jesus. And he asked for that every single night. So one night he prayed, Jesus, be with me. I would like so much to talk to you. And he goes to sleep. The day after, he wakes up and he sees Jesus beside his bed. And he was so happy that he was able to see Jesus and talk to Jesus. It was a dream come true. Everything that he wanted, everything that he asked for. And then he heard the bell of the seminar ringing. It was the time to go outside and to help the poor, to give food to them, to help them. And it was his turn. That day, he had to open the gates and leave the poor people come inside the seminar. So he couldn't stay with Jesus. So he was looking at Jesus and he was saying, everything that I wanted, that I asked for, and now I cannot stay with you. So his heart was heavy, it was so sad, but he gets ready and he went to see the poor people and he complied with his tasks of the day, and he was so sad during all the day because he left Jesus in his bedroom. He couldn't talk to Jesus. He didn't have a chance to even ask anything. And then when the day is gone, the work's done, he came back to his bedroom sad. When he opens the bedroom's door, who was there? Jesus. Then he feels so happy that Jesus was there waiting for him. And then Jesus said, if you have stayed, I would have gone. So that's the good invitation for us. It's not about only shouting for help, but act towards our own enlightenment. To act. What can I do in order to help myself in these circumstances, or to see the ways to solve this problem that I'm living now? What I can learn from this? What the virtues that I am invited to develop? And then, as I said, there were many rebuked him, because when he started shouting, people around him were saying, "Shut up, stop yelling, don't shout anymore, just be quiet." But he was shouting even louder. "Son of David, have mercy on me." He didn't care about what people were saying. And this doesn't happen with us. Maybe with us, with our work, in our volunteer work, when we start doing things around our duty, trying to comply with our duty here with our volunteer work, we don't heard from our family sometimes and friends saying, "You are doing too much. Why are you going again to the Spirit Center? Are you going to have another meeting?
Do you live at this house?
Yeah.
Do you live here?
Yeah, do you live here? Do you still live here? Or are you going to live there? Are you going to do another lecture?" So that's what we hear, right? So, and as many efforts that we do, more people are asking us that we are not doing too much. And sometimes, if you see it the other way, like sometimes we have a problem in our lives, and then another problem happens, and then another problem happens. So this was piling up, one after another. So we feel like, oh my gosh, what I can do here? There's so many things to deal with, to cope with. And that's the invitation, to shout even louder, to ask even more, to have more faith, to believe even more that we are going to be helped, that as Mana very well said, God and Jesus are with us every time. But we are invited to calm down, being able to see them. God's energy is very subtle. It's invitation, it's light, it's smooth. And when we are in this conflict, when we are passing through a situation that gives us this anxiety, we cannot feel, we cannot see, because we go to another type of energy, and we cannot see or feel. That's the reason that Jesus says, "Come to me, everyone that is burdened and tired." Because why Jesus invited us to come to him? Because he is able to provide us this relief, so we can calm down, and then we can think better. We can find more answers that we are looking for. And this happens in all the Gospel. There are lots of examples of people that were in the same situation as Bartimaeus. The Veronica, the sick woman, when she was trying to reach Jesus, there were a crowd around Jesus, and she was able to touch the piece of his cloth. And he said, who touched me? And Peter said, "Why you are saying that? There's so many people around you, pushing you around and crowding you, so you are asking who touched you?" And he said, "I know somebody touched me, because from me get out some virtues." And the same thing happens to Zacchaeus when he had to climb the tree to see Jesus passing, because there was lots of people around Jesus. He could not see Jesus if he was down there, because he was a very short man. So he had to go up to the tree to see Jesus, and he starts shouting, and then Jesus looked at him, "Oh, Zacchaeus, I'm going to be in your house today." So that's the way. Sometimes we need to shout, because God knows that, but God doesn't know what we need. Yes, God knows what we need. but it's important for us to take the action, to ask for. And the question is what we have been asking God. If we ask for patience, for instance, we are going to have lots of situations that will help us to develop patience.
Can you just give patience?
So, be
That's
careful
saying,
what you
right?
ask.
Be careful.
That's like saying, the more I pray, the more ghosts I see.
Exactly. Why is that?
So yeah.
So we can really develop the virtues that we are invited to. And we have sometimes resistance, or this lots of people asking us to stop shouting, asking us to be quiet. And sometimes comes from our inner selves. Our, I like to bring this parable of the, I don't know the name in English, the friend that doesn't wanna, the friend that goes out at midnight, importune.
Parábola do amigo importuno.
A parábola do amigo importuno. When he goes to this other friend, the friend doesn't want to leave the bed because he's in the bed with the sons, with the kids, which means that the ill will and all the laziness, the pride, the I don't want to do, I don't want to, I am accommodated here, I don't want to leave. So we have those feelings inside of us too that ask us, no, you don't need to do that. You don't need to be patient. Sometimes you just need to not tolerate. So people respect the boundaries. But that's the way that we should act towards ourselves. How can we develop virtues if you don't practice them? How can we get strength muscles if you don't go to the gym? I hate that part. Never go. You get a better example. But anyways, that's how we practice. And then Jesus stopped and said, call him. Jesus, so here we can see that Jesus didn't go to there. He didn't say, okay, stop everybody, let me go there. And I help him. No, Jesus didn't do that. He stayed where he was and said, call him. Why?
Because you have to go, you have to seek what you're looking for, right?
Exactly. Come to me. If you want to do something, if you want something from me, come to me. What do you have? Jesus always asked very conscious questions. We need to work towards our own enlightenment. So they called him. Cheer up, be happy, he's calling you. And then he throwing his cloak aside, he jumped to his feet and came to Jesus. And here there is something very important to know about that time. So we are in Jerusalem 2,000 years ago. The beggars, they need to use this cloak, which is a kappa, which represent that they were beggars. And where they put all the donations of the day, he put inside their cloak. So here it's a great symbol because he took out, he left there. So I don't need this anymore. I'll be cured. He's calling me. I'm ready. I'm not going to be a beggar anymore. He gave up to be a beggar. He just throw outside. He jumped. He was ready. He was stand up, and he went. He walked. He acted towards his own evolution. He raised and followed. And here there is a very important passage from Emmanuel, from the Our Daily Bread, where he says, most Christians are adapting in almost all their work to the law of the least effort. We only will be able to self-transform ourselves if we make efforts. It has been like that with all those that are superior spirits now. All of them had to work towards their own enlightenment. Sometimes we read a text from Emmanuel and think that how much knowledgeable this superior spirit has, how much knowledgeable is Emmanuel. But he had to work for a long way when we see that in all the books that we read, even Renuncia.
Yeah. We have to mention to everyone after the lecture why we're saying that.
I think Emmanuel, for one thing that if we want to learn, he's so clear that he doesn't dance around the words.
Mm-mm.
In all his passages, in all his texts, he makes it very clear to us that's straight. It's important to do the effort.
It's
yeah,
important.
It's I think it's his, my opinion, one of his trademarks.
Yes, yes, that's true. I think that too. And it's important for us to understand that if we don't act, we always comply with we only can comply with the mercy, the law of mercy, the law of merity, if you if you act. And then the question, Jesus asked him, what do you want me to do for you? And that's the question that sometimes we should think about. If Jesus comes to ask us that, what are you going to answer? Bartimaeus answered the right answer. He answered what he really needed. I want to see. Do you want to see? It's important, because if we don't really ask that deeply to ourselves, sincerely, how we are going to be able to see beyond our pride, our selfish, all the imperfections that we still have, that creates this, that blocks us to see how we are. But even more, who we are. We are divine essence of God. We are creatures of God. We have the light inside of us. Jesus said that you are God. You can do what I do and even more. But we are invited to work in our, to light up our lights. And then Bartimaeus follows Jesus along the road towards Jerusalem, the city of the peace. Go, your faith has healed. So here Jesus always said that to everyone that he cured. It's not he that was cured them. They had the faith, so the Bartimaeus had the faith, so he threw his cloak aside, he walked towards Jesus because he had the faith that he would be cured.
And he was ready. Right?
He was
ready to change his life.
Exactly, because he was on the exit of the city. He was right to go up, to walk towards Jerusalem. So we invited to follow Jesus. And the doctrine of Spiritism helps us so much to see with more clarity. It's a sun that enlightens our pathway. And to finalize, we need to remember that Jesus said that too. I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. When we follow Jesus, we have enough light. And to follow, what is the pathway to go? He is the light of the world. And we are invited to work towards our own light to be able to light our own steps. So we can see a journey from a man that was blind, that could not see the pathway that his own journey towards God, but when he heard Jesus, he was able to act, he was able to do something to enlighten his own heart, to walk in his own journey, following Jesus. And we are all invited to be as partner, to see beyond this material life, this material existence, and see us as immortal spirits that will be evolving and walking with Jesus for eternity. Anyone has any comments or questions?
Reminded me of the song Amazing Grace, how it says, I was blind, but now I see.
Yeah. Can you sing for us?
Amazing grace, that's all.
Just as somewhat a parallel of what are we asking for Jesus, right? And then we talk a lot sometimes, and the Spiritist doctrine guides us, and sometimes there's nothing we can do in certain situations, but there's always one thing left to do, which is one of the most important, that is pray.
For sure.
And I think similar to what we are asking to Jesus is what we are asking in our prayers.
Exactly.
Yeah. And Sonia has done some beautiful lectures about prayer, and it's the Gospel according to Spiritism has a lot that can shine the light in the ways that we are invited to pray. Just a parallel.
Wonderful, thank you. Yeah, that's how we can shout.
Yeah, that's how we can shout exactly.
Our prayers.
And I think it's funny because when you have that situation, that you have the burden. So, okay, you close your eyes and you pray. So, God, please give me patience, as an example.
Mm-hmm.
And then, okay, you ask for patience. And then you get better. After some time, you get better. But one of the things I think it's important to remember is that you ask for patience, I don't know, at the beginning of the month. And you're still going to have lots and lots of situations where you have to practice your patience, right? So you have, okay, I did request, I did ask for patience. So now, I guess my point is we always have to remember what you asked some time ago, because that will keep happening. And when this happens to me, I think, okay, I did request for patience, this is happening now, and I do need patience right now. So I guess we are always invited to always remember what we asked for. And you're gonna keep practicing and exercising that throughout your life, right? Because it never ends. It's a virtue that you have to constantly be practicing to have more and more, and luckily, well, not luckily, but hopefully it's gonna get easier and easier to be patient, right?
Yeah.
I was thinking about the same example, the patience. It was like, when you ask for something, you don't get it. You get a possibility to walk the walk, right? Like to practice that. So like, exactly the same thing. It's like, be careful what you ask for, because there will be several opportunities where you can learn that. So don't expect that it will like a cartoonish. It's not like
right away.
Lightning come and just enlighten you, and you get that out of nothing. But like if you just don't go and walk the walk, you will not.
And another thing, Ju, about that is, okay, you requested for something, but it's God's time. It's not my time to have that, right? Because together with my effort,
it's not for tomorrow.
It's not for tomorrow. We have to wait for. We have to be patient.
We have to be patient.
You guys went to college and do it for 4 years, right? Oh, you want a bachelor? That it's not tomorrow. It's a process. It's a learning opportunity that things happen until it's just, oh, when did it happen? Same way as like raising a kid. When did they grow? So many inches, whatever it is, right? Getting like the baby example. It's not overnight. It's just
Their time.
Very small, subtle difference until you see a noticeable difference.
And I always remember
Yeah.
trials and expiations that we are now. The trials and expiations, not just for 5 years of our lives, or maybe 10, or 5, or 7. It's the entire journey.
Yeah.
And I always remember what it says, and I keep wondering, when do I have spiritual retirement?
I
I
like that.
just do everything that I want to do in 5 years and then just relax.
Okay,
By the age of 60, I'm done. I just want to enjoy the life here in this body.
Just
It's not like that.
Try to remember what Jesus said, that I work and my Father still works.
Yeah.
So.
And when he incarnated, he still worked.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah,
Yeah. So.
yeah, we can have that. Like we can have retirement in the material world.
Yeah.
In a
So we
sense
can-
of some work, but
Yeah.
not.
And we can
Yeah.
work more
Yeah.
for our spiritual.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And together with our own wishes to God, we don't know exactly what we have prepared for us in this reincarnation.
Mhm.
Sometimes the goal for this reincarnation, Carol's reincarnation, is to practice patience.
Mhm.
So
I
I
like
had
the
to practice
patience.
patience my entire life. It's the virtue of my life. This life, in
To learn
this
to be patient.
programmation,
Yeah.
is to practice one specific virtue. Maybe it's 2, maybe it's a lot, but maybe one it's more than others. We don't know, right? But it's important to keep this in mind.
Oh,
We
yes.
indeed have a program before you reincarnate, and this was the main goal, the main objective of this life, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
I guess one of the points is how important it is to go inside ourselves and try to recognize that. And as Sonia said, it's when you are reflecting inside yourself, you can identify the situations better in our life to recognize, okay, I need patience, I need to practice this and that and that. Together with recognizing all the beautiful things God gave us to us, so this can give us strength, right?
Yes. And we will see that we have sources inside of us, like the Bartimaeus. He could hear. He could not see, but he could hear, so he used what he had.
Mhm.
Same as, what do I have that can help me to overcome this situation,
Mhm.
right? And that's how it's our journey.
Let's all be patient.
Yes, we're invited to be patient in everything.
Do you mind going back to I know we're past the time, to the first, the slide we have the questions, the reflections?
Oh yeah. There you go.
Yeah, so the second one, we don't have to, I'm just going to share something, but, so can we hear the invitations from our consciousness? And I was thinking when I was reading, we have a lot of invitations in our everyday life, with ourselves, with work, family, and everything. But how can we actually hear those invitations, right? Are we, like, everyone is different, but we are always invited to improve ourselves, to work on some virtues, or many virtues for sure, because we have to develop all of them until we get to the end of the journey.
Yeah.
Not the end of the journey, as was that the last level of spirits, so we can find, we don't have to incarnate anymore.
Okay.
But
The
yeah,
purest spirit.
the pure, yeah. But sometimes, like, we hear the invitations and we don't want to see, like the blind, we don't want to see that, or we find ways to cover up for that, for whatever it's being invited. And I was thinking, like, so many people that have very hard, like usually illnesses or accidents or something that bring them, like some people get like heart attacks, or even cancer, or accidents where they lose the ability to walk or to even do things for themselves. why some people get so revolted and others learn from that. It's how we hear into these invitations, right? For some people, like, okay, now I find it's like almost a merciful way from God to say, okay, you're going the wrong path now. I'm not saying that everyone is sick or something is because of that. We're just like thinking about some examples I know, and even with myself, like, okay, you're going in the wrong path. I'm going to help you here. So you're going to lose maybe some abilities temporarily, so you can stop and rethink and be able to connect with that consciousness you have, or already have, because the divine laws are with us, but we don't always like to see it. Don't want to
Sometimes
see,
we
right?
don't connect the dots, right?
No, we don't connect the dots. Sorry, it was just something that from the beginning it just kept growing. We just want to share.
It's interesting you say that, because there is this passage that Manuel says exactly what you were saying.
Yeah.
It's from our daily bread also. He says, let us pray to celestial providence enough light for our eyes to identify the granary or celeiro of grace in which we find ourselves. It is the intimate blindness that make us stumble in obstacles where there is only the divine favor.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we don't want to see that circumstances as the divine favor for us. But if we have this higher view, this aerial view of our lives, we'll see that situation prevents us to be in a worse situation in our spiritual journey.
I thought about the same thing. It's almost like, dude, you don't get it. I will give you another opportunity, you don't get it, right? And then you're just like, you can learn if you just wake up, or you kind of develop other senses. Like if you're blind, you can opportunities, and you don't retire, right? So you have to.
We don't retire. That's clear.
It's like, let's get it faster. So
We
you
may
don't
have
need
some
to go to
holidays
the
here and there, I guess.
But God is so merciful that He will keep saying, dude, you're not getting it.
Wrong.
Okay, wrong.
Another.
Wrong.
I'm going to give you a chance
as
now,
many
so you're
chances.
going to be able to
Yeah.
stop and not keep making
Yeah.
the same mistakes. But it's still our choice, because
Yes.
we can, depending on how we deal with the difficult situations, we may, finally get it and try to get better, or we can keep going in the same way, right?
We'll get there.
Okay.
Yeah,
We'll get there.
eventually.
Eventually.
Depends on us.
Exactly. Victor, do you have any big question there? Oh, okay.
No.
Let's do our final prayer then. Once again, let's close our eyes, physical eyes, to open our spiritual eyes to see all the blessings that we have received today, to be here, to reflect upon Jesus' teachings, to learn, to enlighten ourselves. Let's say thank you, God. Thank you, Jesus, for your mercy, to have mercy on us, to help us, providing these your teachings and another opportunity to enlighten ourselves, our hearts, our eyes, so we'll be able to see beyond the circumstances that involve our steps. We can raise our eyes towards you and be able to see much longer, to see that everything that we learn here we can help us to keep our journey towards our happiness, towards you. Thank you for this blessing opportunity, and that everyone can have a blessing Sunday full of peace